Florida boating accidents. Understanding what you are entitled to. You're enjoying a calm boating run down Florida's intercoastal when another boat slams straight into your bow. Seconds later, you're injured. Passengers are shaken, and the ER is already quoting five-figure bills. If you don't know your legal rights before the insurer's call, you could lose most of the compensation Florida law allows. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly who can be held liable, from the operator to the rental company, and the evidence you must capture today, so you leave the accident with medical costs covered, lost wages replaced, and the freedom to get back on the water, not buried in debt. Florida is truly a boater's paradise. With over 825 miles of beaches, 1,260 miles of coastline, and 11,000 miles of rivers, streams, and waterways, it's no wonder we have nearly 900,000 registered boaters in our state. But here's something that might surprise you. While Florida ranks third in the country for registered boats, we unfortunately rank first for the number of boating accidents. Hi, I'm Doug Bernetti, and I've represented thousands of injured victims throughout Florida for almost 35 years. And as someone who loves the water and has represented countless boating accident victims over the years, I want you to understand your legal rights if you or a loved one has been injured in a boating accident. Let's talk about what makes Florida waters so dangerous. Let me start with some sobering statistics. In 2014 alone, Florida experienced over 685 boating accidents, resulting in 58 fatalities. And that was actually an increase from the previous year. Nationally, there were 4,062 serious boating accidents, and 16.8% of those occurred right in Florida. That's nearly 1 in 5 serious boating accidents happening in Florida. The U.S. Coast Guard has identified the top 5 contributing factors to serious boating accidents, and these remain remarkably consistent year after year. First is operator inattention. This is when someone simply isn't paying attention to what's happening around them on the water. Second is improper lookout, which means not having someone designated to watch for other boat swimmers or obstacles. Third is operator inexperience. Many people get behind the wheel of a boat without proper training or understanding of maritime rules. Fourth is excessive speeding, and fifth is machinery failure. But here's what really stands out. Alcohol is involved in 16% of all boating accidents. That might sound like a huge percentage, but when you consider that alcohol literally doubles your probability of being in a boating accident, it becomes clear why this is such a serious issue. The reality of boating injuries. When boating accidents happen, they don't just result in minor bumps and bruises. The injuries I see in my practice are often catastrophic. We're talking about accidental amputations, broken bones, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and tragically, loss of life. These injuries require hospitalization, multiple surgeries, and long-term care that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's something that really drives home the severity. 3/4 of boating deaths are linked to drowning, and only 12% of those who died were wearing life jackets. That means 88% of those who lost their lives in boating accidents might still be alive today if they had been wearing a life jacket. Who can be held liable in a Florida boating accident? This is where understanding your legal rights becomes crucial. In Florida, several parties can potentially be held liable for a boating accident. The most obvious is the boat operator, especially if they were operating under the influence, speeding, or acting recklessly. But liability can extend much further than that. Boat owners can be held liable even if they weren't operating the vessel. Under what we call the dangerous instrumentality doctrine, if you own a boat and you allow someone else to operate it, you can be held accountable for any accidents that occur. This is similar to how car owners can be liable when they lend their car to someone who has an accident. Employers can also face liability if someone is injured while working on a commercial vessel, or if a boat operator is acting within the course and scope of employment when an accident occurs. The employer can be held responsible under various legal theories. Equipment manufacturers represent another potential source of liability. If a mechanical failure caused or contributed to your accident, you might have a product's liability claim against the manufacturer of the defective part or system. Marina operators and boat rental companies can face liability as well. If they fail to maintain their vessels properly, don't provide adequate safety equipment, or rent boats to obviously intoxicated individuals, they may be held accountable for the resulting accidents. Florida's specific maritime laws. Florida law requires all boaters born on or after January 1st, 1988 to complete a boating safety education course approved by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Violation of this requirement can be used as evidence of negligence in a boating accident case. Florida also has specific blood alcohol limits for boat operators. Just like with driving a car, operating a boat with a blood alcohol content of 0.08% or higher is illegal. Even if your blood alcohol level is lower than 0.08, you can be charged with driving under the influence if your normal faculties are considered to be impaired. Florida Statute 327.33 specifically addresses reckless or careless operation of vessels. This statute makes it illegal to operate a vessel in a reckless or careless manner, or in a willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property. Violation of this statute can result in both criminal charges and civil liability. Understanding comparative negligence in boating cases. Florida follows what would be called a modified comparative negligence system. This means that if you're found partially at fault for your boating incident, you can still recover damages. However, your compensation will be reduced by your percentage of fault, but you won't be completely barred from recovery unless you are found to be more than 50% at fault. For example, let's say that you're injured in a collision between two boats and it's determined that the other operator was 70% at fault for speeding, but you were 30% at fault for not maintaining a proper lookout. You could still recover 70% of your total damages. However, if you were found 51% at fault, Florida law may require that you get zero damages. This is all crucial to understand because insurance companies will often try to blame you for the accident to reduce their payout. What damages can you recover? If you've been injured in a boating accident due to someone else's negligence, Florida law allows you to recover various types of damages. Economic damages include your medical expenses, both past and future, lost wages, and loss of earning capacity, if your injuries prevent you from working in the same capacity as before. Non-economic damages cover your pain and suffering, mental anguish, loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life, inconvenience, and loss of consortium if your injuries affect your spouse. In cases involving particularly egregious conduct, punitive damages may also be available. Property damage is another category that's often overlooked. If your boat was damaged or destroyed in the accident, you're entitled to compensation for its repair or replacement value. The importance of acting quickly. Here's something critical that many people don't understand. Florida has a statute of limitations for personal injury claims, including boating accidents. Generally, you have 2 years from the date of the incident to file a lawsuit. However, there are exceptions to this rule, and certain circumstances can shorten or lengthen this time period. More importantly, evidence begins to disappear immediately after an accident. Witnesses' memories fade, boats get repaired, and crucial evidence can be lost forever. That's why it's essential to contact an attorney as soon as possible after your accident. I assure you that if there's an insurance company involved, they're already investigating their side of the case. What to do immediately after a boating accident? If you're involved in a boating accident, your first priority is always safety and getting medical attention for anyone who needs it. But once the immediate emergency is handled, there are specific steps you should take to protect your legal rights. Document everything you can. Take photos of the vessels involved, the accident scene, and any visible injuries. Get contact information for all parties involved and any witnesses. If law enforcement responds, make sure you get a copy of their report number. Report the accident to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission if it involves death, disappearance of a person, injury requiring medical treatment beyond first aid, or property damage exceeding $2,000. Seek medical attention even if you don't think you're seriously injured. Remember, adrenaline can mask pain and symptoms, and some injuries, particularly mild brain injuries, may not be immediately apparent. Dealing with insurance companies will often contact you quickly after a boating accident, sometimes within hours. They may seem helpful and concerned, but remember, that their goal is to minimize their payout. They may ask you to give a recorded statement or sign forms that could hurt your case later. My advice is simple. Be polite, but don't give any recorded statements or sign anything without consulting with an attorney first. You're required to cooperate with your own insurance company, but you have no obligation to help the other party's insurer build a case against you. Even in dealing with your own insurance company, I recommend that you talk to a lawyer before you let them record your statement, but you still have to cooperate with your own insurance company. Why you need an experienced boating accident attorney. Boating accident cases are complex and different from regular car accident cases. They involve maritime law, federal regulations, state boating laws, and often multiple potentially liable parties. Insurance coverage can be complicated with different types of policies providing different levels of protection. An experienced boating accident attorney understands these complexities and knows how to investigate your case properly. We work with maritime experts and professionals, accident reconstruction specialists, and medical professionals to build the strongest possible case for you. We also understand the tactics of insurance companies, how they use information to minimize or deny your claims, and we know how to counter them effectively. While you're focusing on your recovery, we're fighting to ensure that you receive the compensation you deserve. Moving forward after a boating accident. A boating accident can turn your life upside down in an instant. We've seen it happen many times. The medical bills can be overwhelming. You might be unable to work, and you're dealing with physical pain and emotional trauma. You shouldn't have to face this alone, and you shouldn't have to worry about how you're going to pay for your recovery if someone else's negligence caused your injuries. Understanding your legal rights is the first step in taking control of your situation. If you've been injured in a boating accident, you have the right to seek compensation for your injuries, your lost wages, your pain and suffering, and your future medical needs. But these rights have to be protected and pursued properly. I've spent years helping boating accident victims navigate these complex legal waters. I've seen how the right legal strategy can make the difference between a family struggling financially and a family that has the resources they need to help rebuild their lives. You've just learned about the most common causes of boat accidents in Florida, who can be held liable, what damages you can recover, and why timing is so critical in protecting your rights. This knowledge puts you in a much stronger position if you ever find yourself dealing with a boating accident. But accidents don't just happen on the water. In my next video, I'll be talking about something that affects thousands of Floridians every year, but gets much less attention, and that's aviation accidents. Whether it's a small private plane, commercial aircraft, or helicopters, when these accidents happen, the legal landscape becomes even more complex. I'll walk you through the federal regulations that come into play, how airline liability differs from other types of accidents, and what you need to know to protect yourself and your family if you've ever been involved in an aviation incident. This is information that could literally save your case if you ever need it. See you over there.